This is Traverse's production Q&A about running theatre in a pandemic, joining theatre in a pandemic, and like how pandemic is generally working in theatre, other way around. We are joined by a couple of people who are involved themselves in running theatre on a student or like amateur level. And yeah, we're hoping just to get the message out on how different organizations are coping with the pandemic. I'm going to take my glasses off because there's just this horrible glare coming off of them from my computer screen.
As long as you can read.
As long as I can read.
Yeah.
Yes, we're doing this for Winterland, which is the, for the people that don't know, this is a series of events which run from December through to the end of February. And they're all like free to join, open to the public kind of events surrounding arts. So this is our contribution to that. I think the first thing to do would be to just go through, and if everyone could say who they are, what organizations they're in, and like maybe your favorite play or playwright, because we're all theatre. So I'm going to put you guys on the spot. I'm going to specifically put Frederick on the spot first.
Dear God. If I could avoid the last question, that would be nice. Hi, I'm Frederick. I have been doing theater stuff for about a year, so I started doing it just before the pandemic, which is great. Our first big production was canceled because of the pandemic. I was part of Lust for a while. I still do activities there. I was part of their board last term. Right now, I am vice foreman for Great
to take
Start.
My job.
Vice foreman for Traverse Productions, and when I was part of Lust, I did a small play for Kulturnatten, which is also in Lund, and right now we're trying to organize casting and things for a small play we're going to put up this spring. And I think I don't remember his name. It's one of the Greek playwrights, the one that did the Bacchae. I can't remember his name right now. Euripides?
Oh, it might be Euripides. It's either Euripides or Aristophanes.
Yeah. So that's my favorite playwright.
Okay, and if we go to Georgina.
Hi, I'm Georgina. You can call me George if it's easier. I'm on the exec of Lancaster University Theatre Group. So I'm the safety and equipment officer, which has been very difficult during COVID. So I've been in charge of a lot of risk assessments of many, many things. I'm also a third year theatre student, so I can talk about how COVID has impacted like degrees as well. Yeah, I think it's my favourite playwrights are either Alecky Blythe, because I have a massive thing for London Road, and that's one of my favourite plays, or maybe Stuart Slade. I have a thing about verbatim theatre, so any verbatim theatre playwrights, I sort of like naturally like latch onto them and be like, I love you.
And then Elspeth.
Hello, I'm Elspeth, and incidentally, I used to be the vice president of Lancaster University Theatre Group, but I graduated some time ago, a couple of years, I can't remember, and I started a theatre company with people that I met through Theatre Group at Lancaster Uni, and we started off, it was essentially amateur under a sort of professional umbrella because we're an official company, but we were volunteering our time. But during the pandemic, we just did our first professional production that was fully funded by the Arts Council. So I can now safely say we are a professional company. But yes, we've definitely had to deal with a lot during the pandemic. So plenty to talk about in terms of a very young, struggling to make it through theatre company.
And then a favourite playwright, if you have one?
Yeah. I don't know if I have a favourite playwright per se, but my favourite company, like theatre company that I've seen, which I didn't realise was really popular, and now I'm kind of annoyed that I'm so mainstream. But what they're called, Knee High Theatre Company. They're based in Cornwall, and they're so good. They make exactly the kind of theatre that I want to make, and it's like storytelling, music, puppetry, everything, visuals. Oh, so good.
Nice. And then, yes, my name is Kelsey. I am currently the foreman for Lust, which is Lunds Studentteater, and also the chairman for Traverse Productions. I was elected as chairman, the first chairman for Traverse Productions, because we had put on our first show in, I think it was October, November of 2019. I got elected into the first board as the chairman of like this emerging non-profit organization. And then 2 months later, pandemic hit. And then 2 months after that, I got elected to be the foreman for the student theatre group. So I've been handling 2 organizations during the pandemic, which has been a thing that we will get into. Yes, and then my favorite playwright is, I do really like Edward Albee, who wrote Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. But then I think that's the only play I think I've actually read by them. So I'm not sure if I can say that, but we've also, part of Lust is that we do live readings of a lot of public domain scripts. And I found out recently that James Joyce and F. Scott Fitzgerald are wonderful playwrights, but they're the kind of playwrights that, well, F. Scott Fitzgerald in particular just doesn't care about the producers. He's just like, yeah, no, I don't know, like, make this.
Insert saxophone solo here.
Insert saxophone solo, and I love that kind of devil may care kind of writing. So, yes. The second thing that I was going to ask you guys is, do you have any plugs at the moment? Because I do, which is, and this will be for anyone who is watching later on, but obviously the pandemic's hit really hard. And if you are in Sweden, you can donate to our Swish number, which I could just see like Georgina and Elspeth like messaging me like, I've accidentally muted myself. I have to unmute them.
Sorry.
It's okay. But yeah, our Swish account number will be included in the description for this video when it is posted to Facebook. So if you are able to donate any money, we really appreciate it, and it's going to go towards our next new production, which is Motel Mercury, an original work by one of our own members. And we are currently looking for a couple of roles as well. So if you are interested in any of those, there is information on how to get involved on our Facebook, our Twitter, and our Instagram. And then from Lunds Studentteater, and this is why it's fun wearing different hats, we today, if you are watching today, Monday the 22nd of February, you have until midnight to submit an audition video to be part of our digital production of a dream play by August Strindberg. Yes. Anyone else have plugs?
This is unfortunate because our thing that was on, I also didn't say the name of the theatre company, I don't think. We're called Three Left Feet. Because we had the Snow Queen was the thing we did that was professional. And that was being screened until the end of January, so that's not screening anymore, so we don't have anything on the go at the moment, which is a shame, but keep an eye on our social media if you're interested.
We currently have something going on with OETG. We have a online show happening in the next few weeks called Collective Dating, which we've got a lot of members of our society involved in. It's obviously all been done completely online and been filmed over Zoom. But that's in the next few weeks, yeah, for OETG. That's our current main play which is going on.
Frederick, do you have any additional plugs? I don't know if you do. No,
come check out Motel Mercury. I'll be directing 1/3 of it. Woo!
Okay, in which case, what I'm going to start us with isn't so much a question, but I was wondering if we could maybe take turns and maybe describe kind of the initial pandemic reaction and sort of like how that transitioned from the normal into this very new sphere kind of was in the very early days. And is there anyone in particular who would like to start with this?
I don't mind starting. I don't know.
Okay, Elspeth?
Oh, what a time. So it was like, what, March last year. And so as a company, we'd just done 2 pilot productions in December of 2019. And we were looking to our summer productions. So we were in the process of preparing for A Midsummer Night's Dream, which we were going to do outside in Williamson Park in Lancaster, with a cast of like 14, 17 people. I'd been making costumes, the whole thing had been blocked. Everyone was really like pumped for it. And we were also in the early stages of planning a new arts festival. We want to set up an arts festival in Lancaster. And it's mostly like performance based, but also like fine art or sculpture or I don't know, stand-up comedy, music, circus skills, like whatever artists there are. We wanted to like make a festival. So we were planning for that. And then it got to like March and there'd been the rumblings of coronavirus. And I was exactly that person who was like, it's just the flu, guys. Everyone chill out. I was saying like, I don't know if anyone else is worried about this, but I am not. And I was like, guys, stop being pessimistic. The show will definitely still go ahead. This will definitely be over by May. So we were kind of plowing through until the middle of March when we sort of realized, okay, this is looking dodgy. And then we were still sort of clinging on to the hope that we could do this stuff because we've been building up to it for ages. We were really excited. We had marketing. We had a banner in the town, like ready to go up, and a banner at the park. It was so cool. And then we sort of had to bite the bullet in, I think it must have been April, and be like, okay, everything's cancelled. So we just had to announce like, no, none of it's going ahead. It's all postponed indefinitely. And we were like, it's fine, it'll happen next year, i.e. this year. And now we're in this year and we're kind of like, probably not. So we're actually looking at having pushed that 2 years. We're hoping to do those things next year, the year after. So at the time we were just kind of like, oh God, what do we do? Because all the stuff we've been working towards, we just couldn't go ahead. Like even if we'd wanted to, because the council owns the park, they were like, no events. And we were like, that's fair enough. So everything really like slowed down, kind of shut down. And we didn't really know what to do. We did a virtual version of our arts festival, which was actually really sweet, where we contacted the people who'd signed up to perform at the live event and we're like, do you want to submit a video and we'll put it on this virtual version? So we did it on a Facebook event, and like every hour or so we'd post a new video or collage of people's art or photography or whatever it was. And we had like 2,500 people engage at some point during the day. So that was actually really nice, but we sort of had to throw that together last minute. We were like, let's just get something out there. And then, then we did some stuff like in lockdown. But yeah, that initial like switch, it's just sort of everything just ended. And we were all like, oh. And it took us quite a while to like let go of the stuff that we were planning to do. Like it's only kind of really recently that we've been like, okay, it's fine, like we can still do this stuff, but it's going to be completely new. It'll be in a completely new way, completely new people. Like let the past go, because it's just so impossible to just for events and theatre companies and theatre groups and theatre societies, etc., it's so impossible to operate in this sort of circumstance because you can't plan anything, and you can't get out there and do anything. And that sort of liveness is so key to most people's work, and being together and working together is so key to so many people's work. And that just went. So yeah, I think that answers the question.
Yeah. George, how was your experience in like the March, April time?
Oh, it was, I mean, like anyone else, it was just chaotic, because I think everything, so we were working towards 2 shows, similar to obviously Elspeth and 3 Left Feet. We had 2 shows on the go. So we had Wind in the Willows, and we also had like our big sort of musical we were doing in Chicago, which is going to be performed like the next term. And we ended up having to cancel as soon as obviously the rumble started going around, because I think everyone was waiting for the university to make a statement, because obviously we are a university run student run company. And we obviously got I remember it was a Friday morning, about I think it was at 10 a.m 11 a.m we got the email saying university is cancelled, no events are allowed to happen starting like the Monday of the next week. Like everything was done, so like everyone obviously got sent back from lessons. And obviously the issue with this was it was the day before one of our shows was meant to happen. So our next show was Wind in the Willows was meant to happen on the Saturday and the Sunday. We were meant to have shows on the weekend. And I remember we ended up having to have like an emergency meeting to be like, what do we do? Because we can perform it and try and see if we can get, if people want to be there. If we weren't sure obviously what we're allowed to do, because the university at that point went, we can't say anything at the moment. All we're going to say is events are cancelled from Monday. So technically we had the weekend sort of under the normality of what it could have been, but we ended up saying it's down to the cast and the crew up to what they want to do. Like as a society, we sort of came together like with our execs and made a decision, and the show didn't go ahead in the end, which was really sad, because it was, I can't remember what week into term it was, maybe it was like week 8, week 9. It was about like late into like our term system. Obviously you see everyone who'd worked on the show for the last 9 weeks or whatever, and it's quite upsetting. So I know that the cast, so I was assistant director, so I was involved in it, and it was quite sad being obviously seeing it all sort of cancel last minute, and then we ended up having to cancel our next shows. So I think it was sort of a shock at the start, because I think everyone thought, oh, it's not that bad, it's not that massive at the moment in time, it'll be fine in a few months. Well, we're here a year on. But no, it was, I think because also no one really knew what was happening, or we didn't know what level you could go to with theatre. No one was really used to doing theatre online to that extreme at the point in time. So no, obviously we just cancelled 2 shows. We had shows proposed for the next term. I think we had like 4 shows meant to be happening of the next term and the term after, and we just had to keep postponing those, because we were there going, we haven't been given information from the government and from the university, so we had to sort of wait to hear down like the chain of what we can do. So we just kept like trying to push things back. I know over summer we did like some like really short plays. We did like plays in a day. We had some other things going on, but I think it was scary, because it was an unknown land for society as well. We weren't sure we hadn't done any shows really online, so we were sort of like, we didn't know how to do it or whereabouts to go about it. But I think we sort of learned over the time when more examples started coming out, like, because I also saw the Arts of the Park, the online festival, which 3 Left Feet did, and when you're sort of seeing what other people were able to do, I think we got more confident as it went on. But I think at the start, as a society who have to go along with the university, said obviously the university couldn't say anything because the government weren't sure what was going on, so it just sort of became chaos and sort of unnerving, because we're trying to, obviously come September we were having freshers come in being like, we want to join your society. Like, great, we don't obviously know what's going on yet, we've got to wait. And obviously then we got put into tier 3. We started off in tier 2, then we got put into tier 3 about October time, because the tier system was crazy everywhere. But I think we were allowed to do some things in person to an extreme. Obviously you had to then follow how many could be there. So like, I think my role became very hectic as well, because I am the safety officer, so I had to make risk assessments for everything. Whether it be, I've made so many risk assessments. I feel like I know them like back on my hand. I always have like templates ready to go. I'm ready to make one if you need one. But obviously, it wasn't normal. No one can say it was normal because no one really knew what to do theatre wise. I think it became, I know in September, like I did a show. We had 2 shows going on in September. We had a radio play, which someone had written their own script and they did like an audio play. And I decided to do with my, I have a couple of housemates. Obviously, you've seen Sophie came up, and we sort of, as all theatre students and members of the society, just went, let's just do something fun, which can sort of be more lighthearted. So we decided to make essentially more like a short film of life in lockdown for three young creatives who can't go out and do much because like I'm living with 2 people who like directing. I like directing, but I also like stage managing, so I like building sets. So obviously it's very difficult for 3 people to do different things when you can't go out into the world and do it anymore because your world seems a bit trapped in. So we just thought we'll just embrace what we have, and I think that's what came nice about theatre. We sort of managed to embrace what we had around us or what we knew, and that sort of helped where we are now with doing more online shows and like using platforms like Zoom, like doing live streams or like making short films with the editing knowledge we have. But yeah, the first few months really sort of shook everything around a bit.
Frederick, I would love to hear your input because you were just getting into theatre in January is when you joined the Lunds Studentteater. So I'm wondering from your perspective how it went down, because then I'll be able to say from the same organisation from a managing perspective when it went down.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really have any theater knowledge or perspective from before. So when I joined, I mostly just went to the activities because Lust is a very activities focused place. There's a lot of like do improv certain days of the week, or we do like, oh, now we practice this theater technique, or we do stage fighting or things like that. And I went to those, and that was very fun. And then they started casting for RUR, our main production for the semester. And I joined the backstage crew for that, and everything was going great. And then as the government slowly started introducing regulations, because our government has been pretty terrible, let's just be honest, at actually doing something about the pandemic. So it wasn't like you must have experienced, which like a hard line, and then things went to chaos. It was more like a creeping horror in the background that you saw out of frame, just kept getting closer. You're like, no, this is fine. And we started moving the activities to being like minor. You had to keep distance more, and then eventually they just kind of stopped because just didn't really know how to do the activities online that well. And when it came to the production, I think there was just eventually it was a bit hard to know what was going to happen, and then eventually there was a big meeting of basically all the active members in Lust where we just talked and asked, okay, what do we want to do? And there was a vote, and the vote came out, okay, we are not going to do this now. Hopefully we can do this after the summer when it's all blown over. And that went great. And then things just kind of died down for a while when it came to Lust. There was Traverse had some minor things happening, but everything was very small scale because we could still meet, but we didn't really know when harder restrictions were going to come. So, for instance, when I joined the Lust board right after the summer, we weren't really sure if we were going to do production, but we had the opportunity to present something for Kulturnatten, which we did, but we didn't really know how much we could do because at the time the limit was 50 people, and you had to be very clear about how much the distance was between everyone and every fun thing like that. So we put together a very small production, which was we cut together like shortened a play from 2.5 hours to 45 minutes we cut it down from like 10 characters to 7, and then we had a month to just do that. And we did that. And then afterwards, I don't think Lust has done anything in person because the restrictions have gotten harsher after that. I think now the limit is about 8 in total.
I think it's even lower in certain cases. Yeah.
So we managed to squeeze that in right before it happened. And as part of the board of Lust, we focused way more on these activities, and we really tried to transition to being online. So everything was kind of Zoom calls. We would do a lot of script readings because those are pretty fun to do, like even over a distance, trying some improv and live streaming our script readings, things like that. And we just tried to keep going as best we could.
Yeah. And then, yeah, so from what my perspective was, because I was the vice foreman for Lust in the spring term, and in March, because it was around, I think it's like March 10th to March 17th, that seemed to be the week where it all kicked off in Italy. And that's when a bunch of like major states within Europe closed down borders. The UK was slightly later to that, but they still put in restrictions like fairly quickly on like where you could go and what you could do before having like the first big lockdown. Sweden was really late to the game on any kind of restriction, and there is a lot of commentary on why it has been that way and whether that has worked, and I will not necessarily give my opinions on that during this Q&A, but I will talk about it if asked to. But what happened for us is very, very similar to George's comment, is we were waiting on the government to make a decision so the university could make a decision, so the Studentland, which is the overarching organization that controls all the student organizations, could make a decision, so that AF could make a decision, so that we could make a decision. And that, waiting for that domino effect to happen, and then it didn't for a very long time, and eventually the university took the initiative outside kind of the government's parameters to have all distance learning, which meant we had to go digital where possible. And it was a recommendation, so it was never hard fast. But that was kind of the point where we realized that we could not put on Rosm's Universal Robots Are You Are for our spring term. So we very regrettably had to inform cast and crew that that would not be going ahead. Because we still had some leeway with what we could and couldn't do, we did organize a 24-hour live stream, which had a maximum, I believe, of 6 people in the room at any one time, and we had it on like a rotating thing. So that was like the last thing we did for the spring term. But yeah, very, very much that first couple of months, there was also a slight amount of like pushback from members as well, because it was only recommendations, and there were other theatre organisations such as the Spexes, which were going ahead with their performances. And I know that one Specs, for UK listeners, Specs is like it's a very stylized kind of performance, sort of like pantomime, but it's very famous in and around Lund. Comedic musicals, like parodying historical events, essentially. And there's a lot of very old Specs groups in Lund. But yeah, one of them had gone ahead with their thing, and the night before their premiere, an actor got sick, and they the way they got around it, I believe, was that they had recorded the dress rehearsal and they played that for the live paying audience, and the actors sat in with the audience and like shouted their lines out. So yeah, that was one way that things went wrong, but I from what I understand, they managed to make a performance anyway. But yeah, it was like being in limbo for us with not having a hard restriction, and it was very much like we are completely responsible for any decision we make, because these overarching organizations aren't making these decisions for us. And when we make those decisions, we become less popular with our members as a result, because we can't point to the overarching organization and say, well, we can't because they've put the rules in. So that's been, that was my major gripe in the spring semester. Moving on more generally though, how have your activities been disrupted? And you can go macro, like we've had to cancel this show and this show and this show, and like money, or you can be very like micro and talk about like, you know, member engagement and things like that. That's also completely fine. I'm thinking perhaps we'll start with George this time.
Yeah, sure. I think it became very much like a bit like this. I don't know how to describe it. It went up and down quite a lot, because we obviously had to cancel our main shows, which was sort of a shock to the system for everyone. And then because we had to, it's about like similar to what you said, Kelsey, about how we had to wait for the government to say it, for then the uni to say it, then the students' union to say it, and then it sort of went down through there. So it became like the pecking order of just waiting in a domino effect. And I think because we obviously the waiting and we never got told anything, we just were like, we'll just postpone this, we'll just postpone it and hope that it will come further. So I think there are some shows which got postponed maybe twice. I think they got postponed twice from like 2 terms of happening, which was quite difficult, I think, when it came to it, because none of us knew the extremity really of this or how long this would go on for. We didn't know. I don't think anyone here really thought it was going to be going on till February, like a year later. And I think the other thing, I know you talked about like finances as well. I think we were trying to do things. Obviously, we then had, when shows were cancelled, it becomes an issue with trying to get back rights, because I know some companies were there going, hey, you can have all your rights back, because no shows were performed in the end. So we sort of had the issue with that. But I think trying to get people engaged enough to be like sustained engagement throughout all the events we did. So we tried to have like more social events, or we did more like online readings. We tried to do like more activities to get people going to what normally would happen. So like I think after like a rehearsal a week, like I think we'd have normally 4 shows going a term, and so we normally have like a thing called pints, where basically everyone just gathers in like a social event, like a bar on campus. You don't have to drink, you can drink if you want, but like it's just like a social gathering place. And I felt that also impacted how much engagement we had. So we tried to do it online, and then it just slowly sort of dwindled if people were busy or didn't want to join. So I think engagement was an issue every company and like every society had, because even like when it came to restrictions were low, we're out of the first lockdown. So before obviously the second one occurred at Christmas, some societies were allowed to go ahead and some weren't. So we even had restrictions with what societies could do. So we had to send in risk assessments, but then it became an issue of how many rooms they have available on campus. Like a lot of our university campus, a lot of it got closed off, so people couldn't go in there because you weren't allowed to like move tables or move stuff around, because then you had to be disinfected and everything. Even if you made the most elaborate risk assessments, you weren't allowed to do it, and you weren't allowed to go in certain areas. So I think we then got sort of restricted on where we could go to do it. So like we had the thing about, we're just going to do it outside. We're just going to do a show outside on the grass in the middle of Williamson Park and just see what happens. And obviously then it all just became chaos. But engagement was it was the most difficult thing. It did really, I want to say the word flatulate, I don't know if that's the right word.
Fluctuate?
Fluctuate, not the other one.
Mixed up with flatulent.
Very flatulent.
I'm really
Came in bursts.
I I was close enough. It was close enough.
Yeah.
I'm not very good with big words. But yeah, it sort of came up and down between engagement. But I think it got better over time. But there were certainly periods of just quiet. And you're just there going, I don't know what to do, because you want to try and, yeah, let's do this. I think it's also a thing of, I don't know if anyone else had this, but keeping like momentum and energy, like trying to like keep people like, it's fine. It's like trying to stay positive in a unknown, no man's land, really. But yeah, I don't know if that answered the question. I think it did.
Yeah. Elspeth, what about you?
Yeah, firstly, I want to say like power to all of you guys for trying to keep your members engaged, because for us it was really different because we don't have members. We'll have like people that work with us on a project, but then we have to keep up audience engagement. But it must be so hard to keep members engaged when it kind of feels like nothing real is happening because it's all virtual, and that's a bit existential. But it kind of feels like there's nothing really happening. I know that like personally I've struggled to engage with things online, so I've been like, good on you, everyone who's managed to be like, we're still doing stuff, we're gonna be creative. So I love that. Now, yeah, how did it affect our stuff? So we cancelled a Midsummer Night's Dream, we cancelled the arts festival, we had another little show in the back of our minds for like August, cancelled that. We were going to do a show with there's a museum in town called the Judges Lodgings Museum, which is like it's not Victorian, I think it's pre-Victorian, but it's a house with lots of like little rooms, and they approached us in like 2019 because they wanted us to do a promenade show around the house. So we were going to do that in the winter. That couldn't happen either. So literally everything that we had planned, it was like, that's not going to work, that's not going to work, that's not going to work. And the problem is that being a company, you need to sell tickets to make back anything you're spending. And if the audience can't come, or they don't feel comfortable coming, or they're not allowed to come, or you're doing it in a space that's confined so you can get like one audience member in safely, it's just plain not going to work. So we were like, okay, cancel. And we just had to completely reevaluate our approach to everything. We just had to sit back and be like, right, start again. Want to start from scratch. And that's when we started doing little bits and bobs online. So our little festival, I got a little commission from the theatre in town, the Dukes, to make some shadow puppetry that I filmed, and then they shared on their social media. And I really liked doing that, and we liked how that worked on the screen, because if you're watching shadow puppetry live, it's behind a screen anyway. So I kind of liked how that translated onto a screen, because personally, I don't want to make a show that would be a live show, but it's just a filmed version. I think they can be really good, and like all sorts of places have put them out, like the National Theatre, Bristol Old Vic have put these things online. They've been really popular, and it's been really nice to watch in lieu of actually going to the theatre. But I'm not really interested in making it like that. I'm like, I'd rather wait and do it as a live thing, and I don't have any members to satisfy, so I can wait. Which is that's the benefit of being a little small group of people that can just sort of sit back and go with the flow. That's a good position to be in. But yeah, so that's why I liked the shadow puppetry thing. So then while we were reevaluating how we were going to approach everything, we were like, okay, let's try and get actual funding for a similar shadow puppetry piece. So that's what we applied for our funding for and got. Yay! So we did. It was feature length in the end, which was way longer than I was expecting. I was like, I did not sign up to edit a feature length film, but that's fine. I'll learn as I go. It was really fun, it was really rewarding, and we really liked the product in the end, so that was great. But then after doing that, we got to like February, and we were like, okay, that's done, now what? And it's like, I mean, we could do the same thing. I don't really want to do the same thing. I feel like we need a bit of a palate cleanser, but it's so hard to find something that's going to have as much value as a live show would, and it's going to have as much sort of it's going to be as creatively stimulating as something that I would want to do in front of a live audience. So we're kind of a bit on a plateau at the moment where we're like, now what? And we're looking sort of further into the future, like, okay, what can we plan further ahead, and looking at maybe like bigger scale projects, longer running projects, but not for right now. But we're in a very privileged position to do that because, as I say, we don't have a group of members who are looking to us being like, so what are we doing? Keep me entertained. And because we're such a teeny tiny company, we've gotten away with stuff that larger theatres and companies haven't been able to, because we don't have a load of overheads financially. We don't have a huge like list of staff on the payroll that we have to furlough and that sort of thing. So we've sort of snuck through the middle, and although it's been disappointing having to cancel everything and completely reevaluate our way of making stuff, we've also been quite lucky in our position, being a young company, as in the company is young, not us. I mean, we're young too for the company. And yeah, I think that answers the question.
Yeah. And Frederick, if you can speak to how the day-to-day changed, not really having a reference point for the prior, but
I mean, when I was in the board, we were still doing physical activities, and I was one of the two people in charge of the physical activities, and it was very apparent how things changed over time when we went completely digital. Because at first you got way more people just like wandering in, basically like, oh, there's an activity going on, or I'll check it out because they have a Monday evening available or whatever. But as things close down more, and especially since Lust is surprisingly international, since a lot of Swedish students just go straight for the spexes because there's a long tradition of that. So there's a high turnover of international students in Lust. Once all the international students went home and they didn't want to go to activities anymore and we went digital, there was just so fewer people. You could see, like, in the beginning there might have been 12 people coming to an activity. At the end there were 3 people coming, and it was just it was a struggle, just like Georgina said, to just keep people engaged, because it's very different to be in person and act or whatever and just do things. You feel you can have an entirely different way of connecting to people than if you are in a Zoom call or a Discord call and you have to say something and then wait and then listen and then like, oh yeah, okay, and then you interrupt each other, and it's painful. I think we did manage to get it sort of to work when I was in the board, but it's more been that it's gone from a more bigger group of people where you have to kind of introduce people constantly to smaller core who really, really care about the activities and everyone else there, which has kind of made it more manageable in a way.
Yeah, I could definitely speak about that. So from the student theatre side of things, yeah, we have a group of people. We had to cancel our show. Initially, we had tried to postpone it. And then when it got to September, I sat down with my new board and I was like, are we comfortable? And it was unanimously like, no, it's not possible. So we've had 2 semesters without performance to do like the macro. This is how we've lost out. But yeah, Frederick actually brought up a really interesting thing, which is Lunds Studentteater is one of the few student groups that uses English as its primary working language. So we cater very specifically to the international students who come in on the English language courses, essentially. And I have seen Lust demographic go from like 60-40 international students to probably less than a quarter international students. And that has been essentially because there has been a reduction in international students actually going abroad to study, especially in the spring term that's just started, because the Erasmus exchange is where we get the bulk of new intake from, and there has been very little Erasmus exchange students, but also just because the actual way that we communicate to students within the initial weeks is that there is a student association fair where all of the associations gather in a hall, and we drag students and we go, "Hi, are you interested in theatre?" And then we sell our personalities, and then they come along and they're like, "I remember you from the student association fair." We're like, "Good, you're one of us now." And we couldn't do that. And we couldn't do Helsingborgsgillet either, which was the one which catered specifically to the Swedish-speaking students. So with access to neither of those platforms to actually advertise as an organization, like, we're not the biggest student organization. We max out at around 30 to 40 people, but we're about 10 now, just because the turnover is so quick for us. So when we're actually looking at activities, it's really difficult, yes, to get the members engaged, but just to find the members to do the projects that we want to put on. And I've, since getting into the board and like getting into like managing positions in theatre as well, like I'm very much like, there are two kinds of people who get interested in theatre, and one of them are actors, and they don't want to do anything but act. And the second one, that's your gold dust. That's like the backstage people. That's the managing people. And they're great. And sometimes they're also actors, but you know, they're the actors that go, "Can I help like tidy up?" And they're the actors that go like, "Oh, I really want to actually help set design." And they're your gold dust, and you hold on to them for dear life. But when the majority of your members are the actors that only want to act, if you don't have a stage to put them on, they stop attending. And that's been a really hard thing to cope with this year, is that we've just lost members because we cannot be on a stage and give them that kind of like gratification that they want, which is perfectly fine for them to want, but it's not something that we're able to offer at the moment, and that's really disappointing. From Traverse production perspective, because we were such a small organization anyway, and we had just done one, and we postponed the spring event that we had until the summer, and then until the autumn, and now it's not probably going to happen until next summer at the this summer at the earliest. But we very much took the pandemic as an opportunity to sort out all of the administrative and like foundational things that we needed to do. So we were like, "Oh, we can't do stage? That's fine. We need to create statutes. We need to create like a members code of conduct. We need to establish exactly what we're expecting members to pay, and like what members can hold positions of responsibility. We need to organize, like, can we have an office?" Which we did for a short amount of time. And then it turned out the pandemic went longer and we didn't have an office anymore. So we very much doubled down on making sure that we had like a firm foundation that hopefully this year we're actually going to start building on. So it's been very different. Yeah, like Elspeth was saying, is when you don't owe members something, to how George has kind of been saying, where it's like you do need to keep that member engagement. So it's like doing both has been like difficult. Maybe moving on from that though would be to ask what has worked and what has not worked for you guys, and this can be completely subjective, but like what lessons have been learned in terms of like what you can and can't do. Frederick, I'm going to start you on this one.
Well, damn. What has and hasn't worked? I feel like in the beginning, when I was on the board, we really tried to, in my view, kind of over-engage, in the sense that we were like a pretty small board, and we had 2 to 3 activities a week that were like 2 hours or sometimes longer. And when you have as Kelsey said, about like 10 or maybe 15 people, you're just not going to get enough people to do all those things. So, and then eventually now it's moved to be a bit more like, oh, we have this thing this week, and then you can get a bit more people coming. Because if you just try and overextend, then it kind of dies on its own because no one shows up. And then they show up and like, oh, but no one shows up, so I won't show up to the next one. And then that keeps going until it's just you sitting there reading a script to yourself. So that definitely hasn't worked. What I do think has worked was, this is very specific since we had very lax restrictions, but even putting up some kind of acting which is very small scale has gotten people really engaged. Like the people that we did recruit after summer were almost entirely people that were involved in the small production we put on right after summer. And it really helped just grabbing them along and keeping them tied down emotionally and like, oh, I've invested myself into this. I can't just let them die. And yeah, I can't think of much more.
Maybe it'll come back to you.
Yeah.
Elspeth.
So this is a tricky one, but I think what's been hardest to make work is getting the audience engagement, because, and there's like a few reasons, I think. So when you're producing work that's going out solely online, everyone else is also producing work that's going out solely online. So there is such a busy marketplace of online work. So you've got this saturated marketplace where you're competing with every other theatre company, every other society, every other theatre like organization. And then you've got the audience members who are sick to death of watching stuff online. Some people love it and they've been still really into online stuff. Other people, like me even, I was very quickly over the online thing. I think because I'm a very like social, live, enjoying person. That was very poor English. So I find it hard to engage with the work online, and so there'll be a section of the market that's the same as me and they're like, oh, another online piece, great, not gonna watch. So you've got this constant battle of, that's the only way you can put work out there, that's the only way everyone else can put work out there, and a lot of people aren't going to be interested anymore, or they'll watch someone else's piece. And there's stuff that goes out for free. So we had, like I mentioned before, the National Theatre, as an example, put out loads of their work on the TV and on YouTube for free. Like they asked for donations, but you didn't have to. So if you're trying to put out a piece of work that you're charging people for, you're competing with the National Theatre, who everyone knows is going to put on a good show, and they're giving it away for free. So why should they risk their hard-earned £5 on this random group that might be terrible? They don't know. So that, I think, is what has been really tricky and not really worked per se. And like we tried to get audience engagement, as in like their active creative engagement, by putting out a competition alongside the shadow puppetry Snow Queen. We wanted people to send us in like little bits of shadow puppetry, and oh boy, that was a hard sell. Like I thought people would be struggling for things to do with their kids and they'd be like, oh, that looks cool, let's do that. No, we had so few people enter, even though I was like, but we're providing you with stuff to do. So getting that audience engagement, oh man, that's been really tricky. And then this is sort of twisting the question a little bit. But the other thing that has not worked is the government understanding how live stuff works. Because they were like, oh, it's fine. I think it was like August last year. They were like, guys, you can do outdoor shows right now. You can do them. And I was like, I'm sorry, who has a show ready? We weren't allowed to meet up, so we couldn't rehearse, we couldn't plan ahead, so no one was like, oh, I'm going to prepare a show that's outside for August. And it was like, that's not how events work, government. So that's been really tricky as well, because there's so much planning and development that goes into an event or a performance, which we all know about, but people who aren't in the industry just think a show pops up magically out of nowhere. It's like, no. So doing anything or trying to plan anything not online and digital has also not worked, particularly from the government's perspective. And that's all I'll say on the matter for now.
George, what has been working, what has not been working? What trial and error have you been up to?
I think it's sort of similar to what everyone's already said. So like, I think we try to engage, and obviously you end up, I think everyone found it, you'll probably end up over engaging people. Like you just sort of end up putting so much out there and trying to offer like chances, and then people just sort of don't want to sort of join in. So it became a thing as well for us of we try and put like things out every so often. So it's not like swarming everyone with all these opportunities, because like similar to what we obviously have like our freshers fair where you try and engage people in, and there's people being like, we're doing this and this, and you see people sort of not really grasp because there's too much going on. I think also the issue is with university, with like a student-run society, because everyone's also trying to grasp the whole concept of learning being online, or like the blended approach which some people had. I think people staring at a computer for so long just became a thing of people they just wanted to be away from it. I think that's an issue we had. We try to incorporate, I think one thing which worked is we try to incorporate as many people as possible in shows. So as well as doing like little shows like throughout, we have a thing with our society where we do like term shows. So if it was normal, if COVID didn't happen, we'd have like 4 big shows per term. And then we'd also have something called shorts, where basically if people weren't involved in one of the bigger shows, which is sort of like longer, there's like short shows, which are, I think the longest it can be is an hour. Basically like it's a smaller cast, smaller team, and it's not as much pressure, and you get to also create a piece. And I think we really encourage doing short shows as well over like the first term. So like we did, as for our short show, we did obviously the New Key project, which was like a film based on like the life of 3 like theatre lovers in the pandemic, but we also had like our radio play, which worked quite well because we tried to get as many people in the cast. So I'm pretty sure they double casted it, so they did like 2 recording nights, and like so they did double casting for that, and they also tried to get as many people involved backstage. So we had like a couple of assistants for the director, we had like shadow directors, so if people didn't want to be like fully committed, they could still like dip in and out of the show process. And we had the same for obviously producers, and if people wanted to produce stuff, which sort of got people doing theatre even if it wasn't so obviously in depth in person, because obviously we couldn't do it at the time, even if we wanted to. So I think having the opportunity for people to go for shorts as well, like we have a term show going this term, which will be performed in the next few weeks, and I think the cast is huge because it's the play is called Collective Dating. It's sort of like an anthology of plays, like sections within, and the director took like 3 plays within the sort of anthology, and is putting those 3 forward. So there's like normally if it was smaller in person, it'd be a very small cast, so there's like people would just multi-role it, but instead they've done, for each character is a different person. So like each mini show is like 6-7 person cast, so you've got like a big cast of people. It's like 3 20-minute pieces, but obviously it becomes a bigger thing. So I think we've tried to get people involved in that way, which has worked quite well because we've managed to get a lot of our freshers involved in pieces as well as older members. But I think it also then becomes an issue of, it's what you said earlier about a lot of actors wanting to do things and trying to make sure you've got people who are willing to put on the things. So like I'm sort of saying I like acting, but I sort of got into stage managing, sort of backstage, not directing, over like the last year pre-COVID, when I was able to do things in person, and we sort of then sort of changed into that. And then there's obviously a lot of people leave throughout time. People don't want to come back because obviously it's a stressful time. So people weren't coming back to Lancaster because they were staying where they were back home. Some people didn't come back during term time. So obviously naturally who you have around you to work with as well as a university is much smaller, because like there's a lot of my friends who decided not to come back to Lancaster. They were like, I'm just going to stay back home in Oxford or down south, like just because it was easier and they didn't want to have to travel and risk being alone up here. So I think that also caused issues, but also made opportunities for new things to happen. Like, I know I keep saying the New Key project just because it's what we did as a house, because we were there going, we don't really want to take spaces for shows from freshers or like new people to get involved. So we decided to sort of go ahead on our own and just do a thing which is sort of encased in our own house, in our own little bubble, just to see what we could do. And I think that's a thing which worked quite well because it allowed new opportunities. I know there's other people who have done similar things for different companies, but another thing which worked well is we partnered. There were a couple of members in our society who worked with a thing called Showface Festival. They were sort of like a smaller little company, and they were doing like an online show. Like they were sort of a startup theatre thing that I got involved in. So they basically allowed people to get opportunities like writers, actors, stage managers, designers, musicians, anyone. And they said, if you want to write for the writers, they can write their own work, just submit it, and it gives someone over the country a chance to then direct that with new people. And I know quite a lot of our members, even though it's not a directly us event, a lot of our members got involved in it, which meant they then got to socialize and work with people like all over the country. So like, I worked with people from other universities. It meant I could sort of be like, oh, so what are you doing in this? And we sort of got to work along, and that was quite fun as well and quite successful for our members. And I know that we were sort of looking at doing like things like that. We're trying to partner up with other universities. But I think during lockdown 1, there was a lot of university work where people, they did a thing called Student Save Our Theatres, where like universities over the country sort of all came together and were like, we're going to do a load of challenges or a load of events to raise money for a theatre of your choice from where you live. So I know we tried to work with the Duke's Theatre by trying to raise money for them, just like for donations things. So we did a couple of like events, we publicised some work of ours to sort of like raise money for like the theatre companies, and I think that also worked. I think it really depended on who you sort of, how determined you were to make something work. And I think that's what sort of grew over up to now, which like lockdown 3 essentially, is how much you sort of, lockdown 1 was sort of like a training ground of, okay, this is how it is, we'll work it out. Then as soon as lockdown sort of 2 came along over like Christmas, you sort of like, okay, I sort of know what to do now, we can develop, we know what didn't work, so you're sort of able to change it along. So as weird as it sounds, lockdown 1 was like a building block, a stepping stone for everyone to sort of work out, and like theatre companies be able to try new things, like the BBC Swan Lake from the Bath. Did everyone see it? The Swan Lake.
Oh.
Basically,
ballet dance.
It was a ballet company at the Royal Ballet, I think, did a piece where they're meant to be doing the big Swan Lake performance at like Christmas at one of their big shows. And because of lockdown, everything that happened, they decided to get all the dancers from wherever they were to film sections, but they did the whole thing in a bathtub. So everyone did work in a bath, and they sort of created like this film of it. And it was like, I remember it so distinctly coming out because it sort of appeared out of nowhere, and everyone's like, what's happening? This is amazing. But it sort of gave like confidence for like, if you can see someone like the Royal Ballet creating Swan Lake out of a bathtub, you sort of had confidence as a small little society theatre company for Lancaster University being able to go, we can do stuff too. Like, I think it's sort of, you got confidence as it was, like, as it went on, you worked out what works, what doesn't work, how hard to try and engage members to be like, yeah, let's do it, and how quickly it will slowly start, like, it will start to not be as engaged because you're doing too much, or try and separate it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. From my perspective, like the things that have worked and the things that haven't worked, Like Frederick was saying, early on, we threw a lot of things at people. And one of those things was we saw that the National Theatre and the YouTube channel The Show Must Go On, which featured all the Andrew Lloyd Webber musicals. So we started to have watch together parties for those. And they were great, but it was like the same 4 members. And one of them was me, like for every event. So it was really low in terms of like engagement. And you know, when you're trying to think about it and you're like, okay, but you're not actually interacting, you're just sharing something together. So learning from that, like more of our members events now, it's like even taking like something like a quiz, it's like, okay, we're going to use a quiz, but then we're going to use the breakout room feature on Zoom, and we're going to use Sporkle to like type up the quizzes so you can put them in teams and they can talk to each other about the answers and go through the questions together, like as a team. And it's like using like the Jackbox games, which you can get on Steam as like a way to socialize, because you have to connect your phone to the thing and you have to type in answers and you have to vote on other people's answers. So it was like trying to find things to engage the members that were actually engaging the members, which was like a really steep learning curve at the beginning. We also found with Traverse Productions, definitely over the summer, we were desperate to try and do something because we couldn't do our main production. We were postponing that. Like we were really struggling to find other things to do. So we were like, okay, let's try podcasting and let's try like web series. And we didn't have the membership because we needed the actor types who only want to be on a stage. And without that, it was like the same 5 members who were burning out because they were trying to carry 5 different roles at the same time, like on each person. You were trying to be like the producer, the director, the editor, and then like the person who finds all the people as well, and the person who markets. So we definitely learned a lot last year in terms of having a small team and stretching yourself too thin across multiple projects. So yeah, like with first lockdown being a learning curve, like all of last year was like a stepping stone for us. And I think this year that's the lesson that we've learned, is to focus on a few small things and just rely on word of mouth, or just rely on like people will just start joining once you've got the one thing going and it's going well. I think that because it is 7:10 now, and I think if we just have like a 5-minute break. Has anything positive come out of coronavirus? Like obviously everything awful has happened, but has there been anything positive from your guys' perspective? Start with Elspeth.
Yes, there actually has. Partly what you were saying earlier, actually, Kelsey, about being able to double down on the like structural stuff of how you work has been really good, because we've been able to be like, okay, so we're not haphazardly racing towards a performance for once. We can be like, okay, we need to make these important documents, we need to explore these important avenues. So that's been really good. Also personally, as a creator, I've found it really a welcome break, because I have historically been the kind of person who will just work myself into the ground, take on way too much, get completely stressed, never say no to a project, never say no to doing anything on a project, and just be doing 1,000,001 things every day and just burn out, which I think is a thing that a lot of creative people are like liable to do. And I didn't really realize how much I was doing it until the opportunity to do it was snatched away from me. And I was like, oh, life can be so peaceful. And just actually having the opportunity to relax for a second and think about the kind of creative stuff I'd like to do that I don't normally give myself the time to. I drew a massive chalk mural on my wall at home, which was so much fun. I finally got around to it, and I was like, I feel so artistic. I've started doing bits of writing. So as a creative person, it's actually been very beneficial to slow down and give myself a bit of a chance to explore things. To start with anyway, I'm now a bit like, oh my gosh, please God, let me do something again. And then I had another thing. Oh, that's been good. We would never have applied for money to do the shadow puppetry Snow Queen if it hadn't been for the pandemic. So it weirdly pushed us to doing our first professional funded piece of theatre, which was super cool. It was very, very exciting, and I was very pleased with when it was amazing fun to do. We were spending every day in a theatre. I was like, I can't believe I was like living the dream, which was really bizarre when the world around us seemed to have completely shut down. So yes, some good things did come out of it.
I might follow that one just because I can definitely attest to the creative types like applying for every project and then just because I didn't give myself that break over this. I remember telling my board literally last Thursday, like, I'm working at max capacity, so I can't take on any more work now. And then literally that evening I applied for like helping to edit something else, and I was like, oh no. So like for me, the positive thing is coming to the understanding that I can work internationally and it can work, because previously it's very much been like we lose members as they leave the university to go on and do other pursuits in their lives, and they move up to Stockholm, or they go back to whichever country they're from, or they go on to a different country, and it's kind of we kind of have that, you know, we get to the end of the semester and we know we're going to lose members because they're not going to be here, and oh no, how can they possibly participate? And I feel like this is definitely like a transition into us understanding that we can have these collaborations which happen even when people have gone back home, and we can have these online activities, and we can have these online based performances where we can involve people globally, and honestly, like a Q&A like this where we've got people who are living in Sweden and people living in the UK would never have occurred to me last year, because we would be having this event in person, and I wouldn't be able to ask you guys to fly over because I don't have the funds to like reimburse y'all for that. So for me, definitely like the understanding that we can work globally, and that you can remote into basically any project is really exciting. I'll pass it over to George.
Yeah, I think there have been positives out of it. Like, I've tried to take as many positives as I can out of the lockdown and the last year, because otherwise it just seems so like gloomy and everyone just seems down. But I think the main thing, similar to obviously what you both have said so far, is we have been able to work on like the society as a whole, and like putting structures in place, making sure everything is worked out, like putting in like extra welfare things for members, working on the actual structure of like members' roles and what they can do, and just sort of like honing down as a society ourselves and making it better for the society in general, which I think we would have tried to do but wouldn't have had enough time to focus on if it was sort of normal time. And I think that's been quite effective, even though it hasn't been as productive for like members to see. I think as a point of like on an exec and stuff, it's actually quite beneficial to be like, oh, that hasn't been done before, well, we're gonna fix it and sort of like go along with it to make it better for like those who like take our role after, when like when we finish as an exec. I think we've also managed to develop new skills in theatre making itself. For example, like we did a radio play, which I don't know if has been done before, like Elspeth been able to tell me this, obviously, because I would remember, like,
not that I know of, so
yeah, but like, I think we've had the chance to do like the first radio play as our society. So for that, we worked with the local radio station in Lancaster, so they put it on for us. So like
Beyond,
yeah,
LA1 Bellrig,
yeah. Cute. But like, I think being able to sort of reach out to them and get them to work with us as well and put on a piece of our theatre was also quite nice. That we've been reached out also by like the campus cinema, a local cinema, to Take Two, I think it's called. Yeah, Take Two cinema. I was just panicked for a second. Take Two, not Take That. It's Take Two.
That's a lot.
But if that was a cinema, I'd be here for it. But no, they were like, have you got any recordings of work you want to put out there? So like of our previous recorded shows, which we had rights for. And I think we've sort of been able to build new like relationships with like people, like local places, but also like with other practitioners or like companies, for example, with like chance to do like festival work as well, has also been good. So like we've managed to build on like who we know and like how we work with other companies or other universities even, which I think has been quite good for us in general, because we'll be able to learn more and then use what we've learned to put into our own works as well. But yeah, we've also learned on like new skills of like filmmaking, or like how to properly edit a radio play, or like how to do all these things. Obviously, I know we're currently still in recording for the current show we're doing. I'm pretty sure they're doing a recording of it now. In their rehearsal stuff, they're probably doing a recording of it now, which is also quite helpful. But like we've been able to develop, I think also a challenge has been learning properly how to do theatre online and how to like direct online. So it's not just, obviously when you're in person, you can block and you can do everything because you have the person in front of you and they're not on a screen with a lag or with like technical difficulties or like housemates coming in. I know I was like in a lecture and like a cat climbed through my window, not our cat, just some random cat came through my window, and I had to be there going, really sorry, I'll be right back. I had to try and carry a cat out of my house. But like being able to sort of learn how to do it online and how to like properly, as well as embracing like the little rectangle I'm in currently, like the block, but go with where you can stand in like the frame itself, how you can position yourself, or just like activities and warm-ups to do online has also been good. And I think we've managed to develop that. And yeah, we've just done new plays which we wouldn't have probably done or had the opportunity to do or taken the risk to do if we weren't in a lockdown, which I think a lot of companies can probably say, like, it's just given new opportunities, which has been probably a big positive to the situation we've been in.
Frederick, do you have any positives coming out of this?
I mean, a lot what people have been saying, basically. I have not taken on less responsibility here, but it's, you're home more, so you can focus on personal things. I've played a lot more music. Also, I think, like Georgina said, you're forced to learn a lot of new things, like editing and how to do things online, which you probably would never really have tried before, or like, international things like this would not have happened a year ago, which is really cool. I feel one positive thing I think is that in the sense that we've lost so many members, it means that all the members that are left are really like interested and engaged. It's a bit of a trial by fire, but the ones that survive the trial are really into it. So I guess that's a positive.
My final question then, directly sort of pertaining to like how the organizations have been running, is, has there been like an unexpected roadblock in your activities? And I say this because we ran into loads of like administrative problems with like applying for grants and applying, like even trying to contact the person who like organized our office, just because so many people were either on some kind of fellow scheme or they were working from home or they were working less, that just admin was taking longer than we were expecting a lot of the time. And I think that when we started, we were like, yes, we have to stop. And we forgot that everyone else is also going, we have to stop. So that was a unexpected lesson that we had to learn quite quickly, is that yes, everyone is offline, not just you. Does anyone else have any? I'll leave it open in case anyone can think of anything.
I think a thing which could be happening is obviously similar to the idea of we stopped and the whole world stopped, and you sort of forget that everything has stopped. Like when shows cancelled and stuff, or you're trying to like, we wanted to put on like online work. So I know that some write companies, like Nick Hearn, for example, they were trying to like do writes for online. But obviously, because of everything stopping, it meant contacting rights companies trying to get a response back. Obviously, everything slowed down massively. So it couldn't be like you get like a sort of a quick response from Tamara from Nick Hearn or whoever it would have been. It was sort of became you'd wait for ages and be like, oh, I'm not really sure what's happening because everything did stop. I think also obviously 2020 itself was quite a politically minded year. Like obviously a lot of things happened, like obviously Black Lives Matter happened, and sort of going through everything like which happened politically, as a society sort of developing off of sort of addressing anything which may have happened in the past or any current issues. Like we put in a lot of like measures in place as well. Like we changed our constitutions, like to make sure like everyone to sort of address anything. Like we listened a lot to members, I think, about how they personally felt as well. I think also that's a pro which sort of came out of anything which appeared. Like we got to like we listened more to the members and be like, what can we do to help? Like, is there anything we would change? And I think that even though like if issues appeared which none of us would like be like, oh, this, like we didn't, like it could have been like little small things, but like I think even the small things in a pandemic when you're so far away from everything and you're like, is this big? This could become a massive thing. What's happening? You have no idea. It got to like little things felt huge because you weren't in the vicinity of everyone else to know how big of a thing. It's like if gossip spread like in daily life or anything, because you're so far away from it, it seems huge when actually it's like a tiny thing which is like an easily adjusted. I think they're just some examples of like other things which could have happened.
Did anyone else have any examples of unexpected things?
I think Dredrini has mentioned it specifically, but I didn't expect how tired people would be of online content, because specifically about our live streams. We did a live stream right before the pandemic hit, and it had so much more just engagement than any of the live streams we've done afterwards, even though it's basically the same content. Just the fact that so many other people are producing things and like, high quality, things you would actually pay for. You can't really compete with that when you're like four people reading a script in front of a camera.
Sorry if you can hear people shouting in my house.
No, it's fine.
I had something a second ago. I was like, there's something. I've forgotten it. What was it? Oh no. Oh, that was it. This wasn't a roadblock per se, but an unexpected positive/negative that we found, very unexpected, was when we were putting on the Snow Queen, we did open auditions, which we didn't advertise too widely because we didn't want to be too inundated, and it takes a lot of admin time. And we thought we might get like, I don't know, 50 auditions if things went well. And because it was paid work and there is so little paid work and so little chance to do anything at the moment in theatre, we had 350 auditions, each like 5 to 10 minutes long, and we'd factored in a day to sort these auditions out. So a day turned into a week of late nights and long hours and tearing our hair out listening to the same audition pieces 300 times. So that wasn't really a roadblock. It was kind of a positive, but it was encased in a bit of a negative because we were like, whoa. So that was just a bit shocking of how much people were desperate for something, because there were no shows on, no theatres open, very few audition opportunities. But it was unexpected. Well, not a roadblock.
Yeah, no, I have a relative that works kind of like West End stuff, and they've very much been saying that because so much of them are like contract workers, they're kind of considered freelance, and then they're not like entitled to like the same like amount of furlough. And I while I don't know necessarily how it's working in Sweden, I would very much assume that there's a lot of actors as well in Sweden who are employed on like contract base, and if the contract's not there, yeah, it's definitely been part of a bigger thing, and we've not necessarily been feeling it as like non-profit organizations that cannot pay their members at all. But yeah, definitely that there is a scrabble at the moment for work happening. My next question is kind of this is the fun question. What's the most exciting thing you've seen, like either from like what you guys have produced or what you've just seen other people produce? Like what's been making you excited in lockdown with productions and such? I can definitely start first because I am in love with Ratatouille the musical. So to anyone who watches this who doesn't know, basically a bunch of TikTok people went, hey, we can make Ratatouille into a musical, and there was just this widespread movement of creators like making choreography, writing songs, like writing like dialogue pieces, monologues, inventing like costume designs and set designs and all like around Ratatouille. And then West End picked it up, or Broadway picked it up and made it into a real thing with celebrities in it and everything, and it's amazing. So that's honestly, I watched that probably like in the first week that it came out, and now I'm like, yes, I can make digital content now, because if TikTok can do it, then we can. So that's what's been getting me excited. Anyone else can take the floor at this point.
Well, this is a bit of a rogue one, because it wasn't a performance and it wasn't online, but it was at Christmas. I was walking down my road and I noticed that a couple of houses had window displays that were like Advent themed. I think they were kind of like nativity style things. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Why have they done that? And I went and like looked at one of the windows, and they had like a sign in it, and it was a church that's near where I live. There was a trail of like 40 houses who had done these window displays where they'd probably done it with their kids and stuff, and they'd cut things out, and they made these really like pretty things in the windows, and you could like walk around and view them all, which I thought was such a cute idea, especially for the current climate where you can't go out and do stuff. It was like a chance for people to go outside and go around and look at stuff. It was very low key, but I thought that was really nice. And they actually did that in the town centre as well. They did the 12 Days of Christmas as really beautiful like window paintings, where local businesses have got together with local artists, and they've done these window displays, so you could go around town and find the 12 Days of Christmas. So it wasn't like performance as much, but it was something that was in real life. I was like, oh, how exciting. And obviously the piece we did was really exciting. I don't know if it was exciting for other people, but it was for me.
I can jump on next.
Yeah,
Sure. I think there's been a lot of works. Like I know the National put on all their old works. I haven't actually seen Ratatouille, the TikTok musical yet.
Oh, you should.
I haven't seen it yet. I know
YouTube. You have to be on TikTok. I don't know how to TikTok.
It's on YouTube now.
Oh yeah.
Cool.
I saw all the original TikToks of it starting up, being like, we're gonna do this, and then it's because I know they're now doing like Up, the Disney film Up, and I'm like, I'm so here for that one. And they're doing I think they're doing, what is it, Bridgerton off Netflix. They've now even put Bridgerton TikTok musical. Like they're trying to like make it happen again. And that was like one of the shocking ones. Just the power of social media being able to make like Ratatouille, the TikTok musical, happen on Broadway with like an amazing cast. I know that a thing I got involved in, I got involved in my degree actually, so it wasn't exactly to do with theatre group, but there was they made a play called Insulted. It was about like the Belarusian protest which happened in 2020, and they started doing like worldwide readings of it. So basically someone made a script which is still ongoing. They're trying to like, they've made it public and they're still editing it like to today, and they started doing like, they started making worldwide readings of it, going on, just putting a script out there, and anyone could do it, obviously all on Zoom. And I think that was quite interesting. Like, it's a very powerful and emotional script, because obviously I think throughout the umbrella of COVID, with everything that happened, so that the Belarusian protests sort of were hidden, like they weren't as like prominent with the whole matter which was happening, but like that was, I've sort of, they're still doing versions, like there's still ones being released, like there was a version of it being released, I think like today or something, of another company doing it, which is a really powerful thing. I think like they did, I've already mentioned it with the Swan Lake Bathtub Ballet. I personally love it because I was so there going, it's so, I think which I saw it, I showed my mum it, which is why it sort of stuck in my head most, because it's one of those things of, it's so simple to do that you sort of, it was truly a thing you could do in your house. Like, I don't have a bath here, but I'm so like, I just want to go find a bath and just like pretend I'm like a swan and start doing stuff with my hand, like pretend I'm a swan or something like that. But I think they also have a company called Imitating the Dog as well. It's based off a lecturer who's like, out of uni. They did before lockdown 2, so like last time when we were still in tier 3, they did an outdoor production. So they're mainly a company who do work with like projections and other things, and like big heavy tech things, similar to like another company like Force Entertainment, but they sort of did works outdoors, which was like a traveling show which they went around with. Obviously with COVID restrictions obviously fully in place for it, and you have to obviously have like a ticket and get like make sure that you hadn't have any symptoms to do it. But I think it was sort of inspiring to see that companies are still pushing to make theatre happen, even though like Lancaster, for example, was in tier 3 at the time. But yeah, and then I think just the work like we've done, and like people like Three Left Feet have done, is sort of like, because obviously we can see it because we are local. But I think it's been really fun to see how different companies have taken different works. So like we did a radio play and a short film, and like we're now doing like a series of plays, and obviously like seeing work like the Snow Queen go out with the shadow puppetry, sort of like inspiring us to keep going, which I think is like another thing which is really nice to sort of see happen, like the diversity of theatre that can still happen within lockdown 3.
Frederick, do you have anything?
I mean, for me personally, since I hadn't really seen much theater at all before like a year ago when I started getting involved, what's been most fun for me is just so many really good like plays and musicals being put up for free, like really high quality, all the National Theatre stuff, for instance, since I had not seen like 99% of that. So I got to a perfect chance to see that when I have nothing to do anyway. In particular, there's one that's kind of the one that got away since it's removed now, and I can't find it anywhere else, which is a rock horror musical take on the Bacchae by this Greek culture foundation called the Onassis Foundation. And it was on YouTube, and I just saw it randomly linked, and I watched it and was like, this is great. And then I wanted to send it to my friends, and it was gone like 2 weeks later. And that's the most exciting piece, and also my like, oh, come on, why can't I get it anywhere? Because it was really good.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely enjoyed a lot of when the National Theatre came out, because I had seen a National Theatre live production of Macbeth when they live streamed it like to my local theatre, I think, and like then all the National Theatre like putting their things out, and I was like, I can finally do it. I can finally sit down and watch all these things. Like, So that was a ton of fun, like in early lockdown, just to be able to see the professional performances and see how they were doing things. The last question that I had was, do you think that theatre is permanently changed as a result of this? And if you do, how?
Yes.
Mhm.
I do think that is going to, I don't think it's going to be permanently like nothing like it ever was. I hope it's going to have a lot of its old self back eventually. But I think that the availability of work online and the fact that people have had to think outside the box and inside the computer means that doors have been open to ways of working that people wouldn't have considered otherwise. And I think, because we have always had a real interest, we haven't really achieved this yet, but we've always been interested in having a really engaging and active online presence and like a really sort of transparent and accessible appearance online, partly because it's like really scary starting a career in this industry, because it's really hard to get a job. So if you make your own by starting a company, but that's really hard too. It's like there are so many difficulties and you don't really know what you're doing, you don't really know who to turn to, that sort of things. We want to have quite a like, this is us, this is what we do, and quite like honest and open, as well as making stuff available to view online, because we've got this resource at our fingertips. And I think theatre can get a bit old-fashioned in our mindsets, and it's like, no, we must be on the stage behind the proscenium arch and nothing else. And I think it's quite nice to break down those barriers. And although I much prefer doing live work and going to see live work than doing online work, I think it's going to be really, really positive for people who have never been able to go to theatres for whatever reason, because of old age or mobility issues or financial issues, or just not being near enough to theatres to go to them. I think this move to online has created a space where theatre can be accessible to people in those situations, as well as sort of everyone's found themselves in this isolated situation, but some people's lives are always more isolated. And I think it's actually a really positive thing that it might continue to be available more often on the internet, so people can access it that can't access it normally. And I think that that is a way that it will change permanently in a good way.
Frederick, do you have any thoughts?
I mean, not now. Yeah, I would just agree that it's gone more digital, and I think it's going to stay more digital. There's just been so much released into the ether that you just can't take back. People are going to say, oh, you can actually see, I can see this production from whenever, and it's not super difficult to find, and you'll have theater people learning more how to actually record and edit actual like plays and not just do a weird movie thing, which when I look at really old recordings, they're really weird and really bad, and when you look at the new ones, they're way much better, and I think that's gonna continue getting better. But yeah, just going more digital.
George?
Yeah, I think theatre has permanently changed. Like it's going to be different for a very long time. I think theatre is going to become probably a bit more experimental when it restarts up. I think people, because they've been so like repressed at home, not being able to like do things, obviously all we've done is digital, they've been more experimental with trying new things, for example, like new styles, new sort of forms of like making theatre, whether it be through live streams or through like other means. And I think people are going to incorporate probably more blended approaches for like, if we do theatre in person, I feel like there's going to be more aspects of sort of like digital pre-recorded work, like whether it's projected into like the actual theatre itself, just to, because that's obviously what we've learned for the last year and a bit essentially. So I feel like theatre's going to become more blended and experimental in that sense. I feel like we'll go back to, I agree with Elspeth, we'll go back to some sense of normal. It's never going to be probably the exact same, because I still feel like even when it all sort of like calms down, it's sort of, hopefully there's a light at the end of the tunnel when we achieve that light. It's still going to be like sort of strange for people to sort of go back to what it used to be. Like, for example, like capacity of audiences, it's not going to go back from like 0 to 100 instantly within seconds. It's going to probably be done in like in stages of happening. So I think that's also going to be different. But yeah, I feel like new doors have opened with new styles we have done. That we're going to have more opportunity to do new types of theatre. So not just you have to be like on stage doing this, and this. Like my, not to do with the society or anything, or like a company, but before lockdown one occurred, my brother was on an acting tour around Spain doing the Picture of Dorian Gray, and obviously when borders got closed, he got on the last plane home. Otherwise, he would have been stuck in Spain. So like he managed to get like the last flight back, because everything got cancelled, and basically the company just went, find your own way back. We can't afford to get you back to England. So I feel like traveling work as well as like doing tours and stuff, that's also going to change in terms of generalized theatre. I feel like it's going to come back to normal. It's just going to start very small and sort of try and build its way back up slowly. But like, I think another thing which I was going to say is like how people do theatre, like whether you're stage manager, whether you're doing costume or sound or tech or like set building, and then like that's going to be completely different to like doing it sort of in a room, and you're like, oh, to make it different, I'm going to put like a photo and try and like hide within like a virtual background. So like how we do sets and sort of incorporate everything's going to change. Producing wise, like publicity is a thing Elspeth was saying about trying to like publicize and sort of work online and like become bigger on as an online presence. Obviously, like as a society, we used to like do like flyering in like town, trying to hand out like flyers, sort of get people more invested as well as having like social media going online, like making trailers and trying to publicize those. I think all aspects of theatre is going to change. It's not just going to be, I just feel like it's going to change in general, and probably change for like the better, because we have learnt new things, and it's just going to sort of evolve. And I'm sort of looking forward to like how, like when I leave like the society, how LUTG is going to go forward and sort of like evolve different ways like to create theatre, be more like experimental with it. And I'm sort of looking forward to seeing where it all goes, really.
I'll be honest, I don't think I can add a lot more onto what you guys have been saying. What I think will go back to normal sooner than we hope is the show must go on mentality. And I'm hoping that we do kind of keep a semblance of like, you know, if you're ill, stay at home. But I think unfortunately that's going to be one of the things that we lose quickly, going back from kind of lockdown pandemic situation into like a normalized or return to normal sort of thing. What I am hoping we keep though is digital tickets and offering those as a standard rather than like an exception to the rule. And yeah, again, posting performances up, because like prior to the pandemic, Star Kids were like the only production group that were putting their content online, and now everyone has put something or other on their YouTube channel. And I didn't realize how spoiled I was for theatre until I left the UK. And like there is obviously theatre going on in Skåne in the south of Sweden, but I don't have access to it because I don't have access to the language. And knowing and watching the feeds for like the National Theatre stuff, the chat feeds, and seeing where people are checking in from is great, because there is such a geographical, like physical border to what kind of theatre you can access. Because if you're not in the UK and you don't have access to like West End, and if you're not in America and have access to Broadway, it's a real struggle to find like high quality theatre performances, or even to know that there is theatre happening in your area. So I think that this pandemic has done a lot of good in just showing people that theatre is accessible, and part of that was the Hamilton drop back in July, which was professionally recorded stage production, and it was a very well directed production in that sense, where with just the cinematography. And I hope that becomes the standard, that we get more pro shots coming out of this as well, so we, like Elspeth was saying, so we can diversify who has access to theatre. That's what I'm most excited about. So yeah, does anyone have any questions or final comments that they want to put towards the group?
I thought of something else on the topic, but it's a bit of a downer to end on.
We'll find something else after, don't worry.
I was like, oh, I've just thought of a negative way that's going to change, which is more so like the industry as a whole. And again, this is me sort of atting the government, and that so many theatres had to close and so many people have lost their jobs. And as someone who myself, and I know loads of people who once they graduated applied for theatre-based roles, and like low-level theatre roles, production assistant, something else assistant, like trainee this, like the lowest rung, and everybody was being passed up constantly for people with more experience. That was before the pandemic, when fewer people were looking for these jobs. And now all these theatres have closed and companies have probably gone bust, and loads of people have lost their jobs. There's now like thousands more people vying for these positions. So I think that's a hugely negative impact it's had that isn't going to go away quickly. And it's certainly not going to go away if the government continue not to care about the arts. And continue not to encourage children to study it or to pursue careers in it, and they continue to not have lots of funding for it. And I think that the pandemic's really highlighted that problem, and economically, the impact's been massive. So I kind of, the optimist in me wants to think that the government and all of the consumers of art, which is everyone, in London, like everyone watches TV, everyone reads books, well, not everyone does all of those things, everyone consumes some kind of art, and people take it for granted a lot. And the optimist in me wants to think that they'll see the disruption caused by the pandemic and they'll appreciate it more, they'll realize that it needs more support and it needs more celebration. But the pessimist in me is like, I don't actually know if that's what's going to happen, and we've got more problems than we did to start with. So yeah, but that's such a downer, so think of something happy.
I mean, it's not the worst thing to end on that though, like as a reminder to everyone that this is an industry, and that it needs not only like personal support from individuals but also structural support. And that, yeah, we're talking very positively about how theatre is going to change, but going back to a normal for theatre is going to take a very long time. I am kind of happy to end on that. Give us
on that bombshell.
Yeah. But yeah, no, yeah, on that bombshell, if people want to join Lancaster University Theatre Group, how do they do so, George?
Well, if you want to join, they can go onto our page on Facebook. We have membership going for like, I think it's £2.50 currently to be involved in shows and to be involved in society and all the events going on. And then they'll be added onto like our forums. And yeah, we can be involved that way. And then you can be involved in any of our socials going on. You can audition for our shows and be a part of the society in general.
And for Three Left Feet, how do people get involved?
So we have a website, which is www.threeleftfeet, 3 spell out THREE.co.uk. And we're also on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter as @3leftfeet UK. And we have an email address, which you can also find on all of those to ask specific questions, which is info@threeleftfeet.co.uk. And I really would recommend following us on social media, because if we have any opportunities coming up for auditions or, I don't know, commissions or competitions, anything like that, that will always be posted on social media. And if we have anything, any like online festival type things like last year, or any more performances that are going out online, that will also be plastered all over our social media as well. So just hit us up on social media, really.
Yeah. And then Frederick, I think I know the things off the top of my head, so I won't ask you to. But,
I mean, it's only if someone finds a recording of that one play and they want to send it to me. Go through Traverse.
yeah, so if you want to get involved with Lunds Studentteater, they are Lunds Studentteater on Facebook. We also have a Instagram account, which is Studentteater. You can also email info@lundsstudentteater.se, and probably I will answer you and tell you how you can get involved. If you want to get involved with Traverse Productions, we are Traverse Productions on Facebook. We are traverse.se on Instagram, and we are traverse_se on Twitter. And you can also email info@traverseproductions.se. And again, we'll tell you guys how to get involved. And we're always both organizations that I'm in are always advertising when we have auditions, or when we have things going on that you can get involved with.
Our handles, I've been I was like, everyone was saying that, so oh, I should have said it earlier. On Instagram, we are @Theatre Group, and then we'll be Lancaster University. Similar to Facebook, just type in Lancaster University Theatre Group on there, and you can find us on there. We also have a website. We have a little website, which I will hopefully give to Kelsey, and Kelsey can put up on the top of my head. But yeah, the best thing to follow us on would be like our newest play, which is happening at on Instagram. It's LUTG Collective Dating, and that's happening on the 5th to 7th of March at 7:30 on Zoom.
And on that note, I'm going to thank Frederick, Elspeth, and George very much for coming tonight. And this has been great.
Thank you very much for letting us be a part of it.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's been fun.